The dusty streets of Laramie, Wyoming territory, fell silent as three mounted men rode into town, their weathered faces set with determination, and their guns gleaming in the harsh summer sun of 1878. Dahlia Turner stared through her father's general store window, the sinking feeling in her stomach telling her they'd come for her. "Papa, they're back," Dahlia whispered, her fingers trembling as she gripped the counter. At 22, she'd been managing her father's store for nearly 5 years since her mother passed, but nothing had prepared her for the arrival of the Blackwater Gang 3 weeks prior. Oscar Turner looked up from his ledger, his aging face paling. "Get in the back, Dahlia. Now." She hesitated, her blue eyes fixed on the approaching men. The leader, Silas Jenkins, had been explicit in his intentions during his last visit. He wanted Dahlia as his wife, and he intended to have her, with or without her consent. "Papa, we should run." "There's nowhere to run, child," Oscar replied softly. "Just stay hidden. I'll handle this." The bell above the door jangled as the 3 men entered, spurs clinking against the wooden floor. Silas Jenkins removed his hat, revealing greasy dark hair and a cruel smile that never reached his eyes. "Mr. Turner," he drawled, "fine day, ain't it?" Oscar straightened his shoulders. "What can I help you with, Mr. Jenkins?" Silas's gaze swept the store, searching. "I believe you know why I'm here." "Where's your lovely daughter?" "She's not here," Oscar lied, his voice steady despite his fear. From her hiding spot behind the storeroom door, Dahlia could see through the crack as Silas slammed his fist on the counter. "Don't lie to me, old man." "I saw her in the window." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I've been more than patient. I've given you time to consider my offer, but my patience is wearing thin." One of Silas's men, a wiry fellow with a pockmarked face, snickered. "Boss has been mighty generous considering." Dahlia's heart hammered in her chest as she inched backward, deeper into the storeroom. There was a back door that led to the alley, if she could just slip out unnoticed. "My daughter isn't interested in marriage, Mr. Jenkins," Oscar stated firmly. "Especially not to a man with your reputation." Silas's face darkened. "Reputation? I run the most successful cattle operation north of Cheyenne. Any girl would be lucky to have my name." "Any girl but mine," Oscar replied, the slap that followed echoed through the store. Dahlia bit back a gasp as her father staggered, his hand flying to his reddened cheek. "You'll regret that, Turner," Silas growled. "Boys, search the place. Find the girl." Panic surged through Dahlia as she heard boots moving toward the storeroom. She turned and fled through the back door, her skirts clutched in her hands as she ran down the alley. She had no destination in mind, only escape. The town of Laramie was small but busy enough that she could lose herself in the crowds near the railway station. Dahlia darted between buildings, her breath coming in quick gasps. She needed help, but who would stand against Silas Jenkins? The sheriff was away in Cheyenne, and most townsfolk feared the outlaw and his gang. As she rounded the corner near the livery stable, she collided with a solid wall of a man. Strong hands steadied her, preventing her fall. "Whoa there, miss," a deep voice said. "You're in quite a hurry." Dahlia looked up into striking green eyes set in a sun-bronzed face. The stranger wore trail-worn clothes and a gun belt that had seen use. His hat was pushed back, revealing sandy hair that needed trimming. "Please," she gasped, "I need help." "There are men after me, there she is," came a shout from the alley. One of Silas's men had spotted her. The stranger's expression changed instantly, hardening as he took in the situation. Without hesitation, he pulled Dahlia behind him, facing the approaching outlaw. "This ain't your business, cowboy," the man snarled. "The girl belongs to Silas Jenkins." "I don't belong to anyone," Dahlia protested, but her voice shook with fear. The stranger's hand hovered near his gun. "The lady doesn't seem to agree with that assessment. I suggest you move along." The standoff might have escalated further if not for the timely appearance of several townspeople, drawn by the commotion. The outlaw, outnumbered, backed away with a curse. "Jenkins will hear about this," he threatened before retreating down the alley. Only when he disappeared did Dahlia release the breath she'd been holding. The stranger turned to her, concern evident in his eyes. "You all right, miss?" "Yes," she nodded, though she was far from it. "Thank you, Mr. Yates," he replied. "Yankton Yates, most folks call me Yank." "Dahlia Turner," she said, offering her hand. "I run the general store with my father, or at least I did until Silas Jenkins decided he wanted me for his wife." Yank's expression darkened. "Jenkins has quite the reputation across the territory, none of it good." "He's given my father an ultimatum," Dahlia explained, glancing nervously toward the street. "He wants me to marry him by week's end or he'll burn us out. Papa's too proud to leave and she faltered. "And you need somewhere safe to stay," Yank finished for her. Dahlia nodded, surprised at how easily she trusted this stranger. Perhaps it was desperation, or perhaps it was something in those honest green eyes. "My father will see to your father," Yank assured her, "but first, let's get you somewhere safe. I have a friend who runs the boarding house on Elm Street. She's discreet." As they walked, keeping to the back streets to avoid Jenkins's men, Dahlia studied her rescuer. He moved with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to danger, but there was a gentleness in how he spoke to her, treating her with respect rather than as something to be claimed. "Are you passing through Laramie, Mr. Yates?" she asked. "Yank," he corrected with a slight smile. "And no, I've taken work at the Campbell Ranch outside town, been there about a month now." "I haven't seen you in the store, been meaning to visit," he admitted. "Ranch keeps me busy, but I need supplies." They reached the boarding house without incident, and Yank's friend, a stout, no-nonsense widow named Mrs. Patterson, took one look at Dahlia's frightened face and ushered her inside. "Jenkins and his ilk," the woman muttered. "Should have been hanged years ago, don't you worry, dear. You'll be safe here." Yank touched the brim of his hat. "I'm going to check on your father, Miss Turner. I'll be back before sundown." True to his word, Yank returned as evening shadows lengthened. Dahlia, who had been watching anxiously from the parlor window, rushed to meet him at the door. "My father, is he all right?" Yank removed his hat, his expression grim. "Jenkins and his men roughed him up some, but he's alive. They ransacked the store looking for you." Dahlia's hand flew to her mouth. "I should go to him." "No," Yank said firmly. "That's exactly what Jenkins wants. He's got men watching the store and your house. Your father told me to tell you to stay hidden." "I can't just leave him to face Jenkins alone," Dahlia protested. "You won't," Yank assured her. "I've sent word to Sheriff Danley in Cheyenne, and until he returns, I'll look after your father. Jenkins won't try anything too drastic in broad daylight." Mrs. Patterson appeared in the hallway, wiping her hands on her apron. "Dinner's ready, and I expect you both to eat. Can't fight outlaws on empty stomachs." Over a simple but hearty meal, Yank told Dahlia about his life before coming to Laramie. He'd grown up in Missouri, the son of a horse breeder, but the war had taken his family's land. He'd drifted west, working ranches from Texas to Montana. "What brought you to Wyoming?" Dahlia asked, finding comfort in the ordinary conversation. "Heard Wyoming was more welcoming to folks looking to start over," Yank replied, "and I'm tired of drifting, looking to put down roots." Something in his tone made Dahlia look up from her plate. Their eyes met, and for a moment the danger outside seemed distant. "It's a good place," she said softly. "Or it was before." "It will be again," Yank promised. The next 2 days passed in tense waiting. Yank divided his time between the boarding house, checking on Oscar Turner, and his work at the ranch. On the third morning, he arrived at breakfast with news. "Jenkins is planning something," he said without preamble. "He's brought in more men from his ranch, and they've been drinking heavily at the saloon, talking about a wedding celebration tomorrow." Dahlia paled. "But I'm not. He means to force the issue," Yank explained grimly. "Word is he's paid off the circuit preacher to perform the ceremony, whether you're willing or not." Mrs. Patterson muttered something unladylike under her breath. "Barbaric. Where is the sheriff when you need him?" "Still in Cheyenne, from what I hear," Yank said. "But I've been talking with some of the ranch hands. Not everyone in Laramie is afraid of Jenkins." Hope flickered in Dahlia's eyes. "You think they'd help?" "I know they would," Yank assured her. "But we need to move you somewhere safer than the boarding house." Jenkins's men have been asking questions around town. "Where would I go?" "The Campbell Ranch," Yank said. "Mr. Campbell has no love for Jenkins. There's bad blood over water rights. You'd be safe there until we can sort this out." Dahlia hesitated. "But my father, I'll bring him too," Yank promised. "Tonight after dark." The plan was set, but fate had other ideas. Just after noon, the door to the boarding house burst open and Silas Jenkins himself strode in, flanked by 4 armed men. "Mrs. Patterson confronted them in the hallway, but Jenkins shoved her aside. "Where is she?" he bellowed. Dahlia, who had been reading in the parlor, froze as Jenkins's gaze locked on her. His smile sent chills down her spine. "There's my bride," he said, moving toward her. Dahlia backed away. "I am not your bride, Mr. Jenkins. I never agreed to marry you." "Your agreement isn't necessary," Jenkins replied, his tone conversational despite the menace in his eyes. "Your father has seen reason. He signed the marriage contract." "You're lying," Dahlia accused, though fear clutched at her heart. Had they threatened her father until he gave in? Jenkins produced a folded document from his coat. "See for yourself, all legal and proper. The ceremony is tomorrow at noon." Dahlia's hands shook as she took the paper. Her father's signature was there, but she could see it had been made under duress. The normally neat handwriting was shaky and uneven. "This isn't legal," she insisted. "You forced him." Jenkins shrugged, unconcerned. "Legal enough for these parts. Now, you can come quietly and spend your last night as a single woman under guard at the hotel, or my men can drag you there. Your choice." Dahlia glanced around desperately, looking for any means of escape, but Jenkins's men blocked every exit. With no other option, she straightened her shoulders, determined not to show fear. "I'll come," she said coldly. "But know this, Silas Jenkins, I will never be your wife in anything but name." Jenkins chuckled, the sound devoid of humor. "Spirited, I like that. You'll learn your place soon enough." The hotel room was small but clean, with a single window overlooking the main street. 2 of Jenkins's men stood guard outside the door. Dahlia paced the confined space, her mind racing. The window was too high for her to escape without injury, and she had no weapons, no means of defense. As night fell, she sat on the edge of the bed, fighting back tears of frustration and fear. Where was Yank? Did he know what had happened? She tried to take comfort in the thought that he would come for her, but as hours passed, doubt began to creep in. The town eventually fell silent, most establishments closing for the night. Dahlia moved to the window, gazing out at the stars and wondering if this would be her last night of freedom. The thought of being tied to Silas Jenkins for the rest of her life was unbearable. A soft tap at the window startled her from her thoughts. Peering into the darkness, she gasped when she saw Yank's face. He put a finger to his lips, signaling for silence, then gestured for her to move back. Using the butt of his pistol, he carefully broke the glass, making as little noise as possible. He cleared the frame of shards, then reached through to unlock the window. "Are you hurt?" he whispered as he helped her onto the windowsill. "No," she whispered back. "But my father, he's safe," Yank assured her. "We got him out of town. Can you climb down?" Dahlia looked at the makeshift rope ladder he had secured to the window frame. It was a daunting prospect, but the alternative was worse. "Yes," she said with more confidence than she felt. Slowly, carefully, she made her way down, Yank following close behind. When they reached the ground, he took her hand and led her through the shadows toward the livery stable. "Jenkins has men all over town," he explained in a hushed voice. "We need to move quickly." 2 horses waited in the stable, already saddled. Dahlia recognized one as belonging to her father. "Where are we going?" she asked as Yank helped her mount. "Campbell Ranch first," he replied. "Then, if necessary, across the territorial line. Jenkins has influence here, but it doesn't extend far beyond Wyoming." They rode in silence, keeping to less traveled paths and maintaining a steady pace that wouldn't exhaust the horses. Dahlia, though an experienced rider, found herself struggling to keep up with Yank, her skirts hampering her movements. "We'll rest at dawn," Yank promised, noting her fatigue. "There's a creek about 5 miles ahead with good cover." The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten when they reached the creek. Yank helped Dahlia dismount, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "You're doing well," he said, his voice gentler than she'd heard it before. "Thank you," she replied, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "For everything." Yank cleared his throat, stepping back. "I'll see to the horses. There's food in my saddlebag, nothing fancy, just jerky and hardtack." As they ate their simple breakfast, Dahlia asked the question that had been on her mind. "How did you know they'd taken me to the hotel, Mrs. Patterson?" Yank explained. "She came to the ranch as soon as she could. By the time I got back to town, Jenkins had already set guards. I needed to wait for the right moment." "What about my father? You said he's safe?" Yank nodded. "He's at the Campbell Ranch. Jenkins's men roughed him up pretty badly when they forced him to sign that marriage contract, but he'll recover." Dahlia's eyes filled with tears. "This is all my fault." "No," Yank interrupted firmly. "The only one at fault is Silas Jenkins. Men like him take what they want without thought for others. You have nothing to blame yourself for." They rested for an hour, then continued their journey. The Campbell Ranch was still several hours' ride, and both knew Jenkins would discover Dahlia's escape at first light. Sure enough, as they crested a hill around mid-morning, Yank spotted dust trails behind them. "Riders," he said grimly. "At least 4 of them." "They're following our trail," Dahlia realized, fear evident in her voice. "We're close to the ranch," Yank assured her. "Just a few more miles." They urged their horses to a faster pace, but the pursuers were gaining. The flat, open country provided little cover, and their tired mounts couldn't maintain the pace indefinitely. "There," Yank pointed to a small cabin nestled against a rocky outcropping. "Line shack for the Campbell Ranch. We can make a stand there if needed." They reached the cabin minutes ahead of their pursuers. Yank helped Dahlia inside, then secured the horses in the lean-to at the back. The cabin was sparse but defensible, with thick log walls and narrow windows. "Stay away from the windows," Yank instructed as he checked his rifle. "There's ammunition in that box by the fireplace if we need it." Dahlia nodded, her heart pounding. "Yank, I can shoot. Papa taught me." He glanced at her, surprise giving way to respect. "Good, take this revolver. Only use it if they get inside." The sound of approaching horses silenced further conversation. Through a crack in the shutters, Dahlia could see Silas Jenkins and 3 of his men pulling up outside. "I know you're in there, Turner girl," Jenkins called. "Come out now and maybe I won't shoot your cowboy friend." Yank positioned himself by a window, rifle ready. "Stay back, Jenkins. The lady's made her choice and it isn't you," one of Jenkins's men laughed. "Ain't her choice to make, cowboy. Boss has a contract. A contract signed under duress isn't worth the paper it's written on," Yank retorted. Jenkins dismounted, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Last chance, girl. Come out or we burn you out." Dahlia moved to Yank's side. "They'll really do it," she whispered. "I know," he replied grimly, "but we're not giving up. The main ranch isn't far. Someone may have seen the riders." Jenkins signaled to his men, who spread out around the cabin. One produced a bottle with a rag stuffed in the neck, a makeshift firebomb. "Your choice, Turner," Jenkins called again. Tension hung in the air like a physical presence. Dahlia's fingers tightened around the revolver and Yank's jaw set in determination. They both knew that once the shooting started, there would be no going back. The sound of a rifle shot cracked the silence, but it hadn't come from inside the cabin. One of Jenkins's men cried out, clutching his arm. More shots followed, and suddenly the clearing was filled with riders wearing the Campbell Ranch brand. "It's Mr. Campbell," Yank exclaimed, relief evident in his voice. "And your father." Indeed, Oscar Turner rode alongside the rancher, his face bruised but his expression determined. The Campbell Ranch hands outnumbered Jenkins's men 2-1, and the outlaws quickly found themselves surrounded. "Drop your weapons," Campbell ordered, his rifle trained on Jenkins. Your reign of terror ends today, Silas. For a moment, it seemed Jenkins might resist. His hand hovered near his gun, his eyes darting around for escape. But surrounded and outgunned, even he recognized defeat. With a curse, he let his gun belt drop to the ground. "This ain't over," he growled as Campbell's men secured him and his companions. "It is for you," Campbell replied. "Sheriff Danley returned from Cheyenne this morning. He's gathering a posse as we speak." Dahlia rushed from the cabin to embrace her father. Despite his injuries, Oscar held his daughter tightly. "I thought I'd lost you," he murmured into her hair. "I'm all right, Papa," she assured him. "Thanks to Yank." Oscar extended his hand to the cowboy who had followed Dahlia outside. "I owe you more than I can ever repay, young man." Yank shook his hand, his gaze shifting to Dahlia. "No payment necessary, sir." The ride back to the Campbell ranch was marked by relief and exhaustion. Jenkins and his men were securely bound and guarded, destined for the Laramie jail and eventually trial. Dahlia rode beside Yank, their earlier fear giving way to a tentative peace. "What happens now?" she asked as the ranch buildings came into view. Yank considered the question, his eyes on the horizon. "Jenkins will face justice. With testimonies from you, your father, and others he's terrorized, he'll likely hang or spend the rest of his life in prison." "And you?" Dahlia ventured, surprised by how much his answer mattered to her. "I still aim to put down roots," he replied, glancing at her with a warmth that made her heart skip. "If the soil's willing." In the days that followed, Dahlia and her father returned to Laramie to find their store damaged but salvageable. The townspeople, freed from Jenkins's intimidation, rallied to help with repairs. Yank was there every day, working alongside them when his ranch duties permitted. Sheriff Danley made good on his promise to see justice done. Jenkins and his men were transferred to Cheyenne to await trial, their influence in Laramie thoroughly broken. The forced marriage contract was declared null and void, though Dahlia had never doubted its illegitimacy. A month after the confrontation at the Line Shack, Yank found Dahlia behind the counter at the general store, sorting through new inventory. "Miss Turner," he greeted, removing his hat. "Your father mentioned you might have some of those peppermint sticks I'm fond of." Dahlia smiled, reaching beneath the counter. "I ordered them special, Mr. Yates. Seems they're becoming popular around here." Their fingers brushed as she handed him the candy, the brief contact sending warmth through her. They had seen each other often since the ordeal, but always in the company of others, never allowing for private conversation. "I was wondering," Yank said, his usual confidence faltering slightly, "if you might allow me to escort you to the Founders' Day dance next Saturday." Dahlia's smile widened. "I would like that very much." "Good," Yank nodded, a grin spreading across his face. "That's good." The Founders' Day dance marked the beginning of their courtship, conducted with proper decorum under Oscar Turner's watchful but approving eye. Yank proved himself to be everything Jenkins was not: kind, respectful, and genuinely interested in Dahlia's thoughts and dreams. By the following spring, Yank had saved enough to purchase a small plot of land outside town. The day he showed it to Dahlia, leading her to a spot overlooking a winding creek, he seemed uncharacteristically nervous. "It's beautiful," Dahlia said, taking in the view. "Perfect for a home." "I was hoping you'd think so," Yank replied, reaching for her hand. "Because I can't imagine building a home here or anywhere without you in it." He knelt before her, still holding her hand. "Dahlia Turner, I know we haven't known each other long in the grand scheme of things, but I've known since that day in the alley that you're the only woman I want to share my life with. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Dahlia's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, Yank, yes, I will." Their wedding was held in the newly constructed church in Laramie, attended by the entire town. Oscar Turner, fully recovered from his ordeal, proudly walked his daughter down the aisle. Mrs. Patterson wept openly, declaring it the happiest day since her own wedding 40 years prior. As they exchanged vows, Dahlia reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought them together, how a terrifying ordeal had led to the greatest happiness she had ever known. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, the cheers from their friends and neighbors echoed through the church. The home Yank built on their land combined practicality with unexpected touches of beauty, a wide front porch where they could watch the sunset, large windows to capture the mountain views, and shelves for the books Dahlia loved. Together, they established a small but successful horse breeding operation, using the knowledge Yank had gained from his father. News eventually reached them that Silas Jenkins had been convicted and sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison. The knowledge brought closure, allowing them to fully embrace their future without shadows from the past. 5 years after their wedding, as winter gave way to spring, Dahlia stood on their porch, watching Yank teach their 4-year-old son to groom a gentle mare. Their 2-year-old daughter played nearby, constructing elaborate stories with her wooden toys. Dahlia's hand rested on her belly, where their third child was beginning to make its presence known. Yank looked up, catching her gaze, and the love in his eyes was as strong as the day he'd proposed. He excused himself from their son and joined her on the porch, wrapping his arm around her waist. "Happy?" he asked, a question he still posed regularly, as if amazed by his good fortune. "Completely," Dahlia answered, leaning into his embrace. "Who would have thought that the most frightening day of my life would lead to all this joy?" Yank pressed a kiss to her temple. "I knew from the moment you ran into me that my life had changed forever. I just didn't know how wonderful that change would be." The sun dipped toward the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Their children's laughter carried on the spring breeze, a sound that never failed to fill their hearts with gratitude. From terror and uncertainty had grown a love stronger than either could have imagined, a love that would continue to flourish under the vast Wyoming sky for all their days to come.